Hey, what up, everybody? I am Lou, and today we're going to talk about how to upload documents to SharePoint. So we're going to be uploading documents and deleting documents to SharePoint. We're using Python in this case. It's actually pretty simple, but I use it in one of my projects where we needed to, just from a high level, not to go too much detail into it, but ultimately we generated PDF documents. As we generate the PDF documents, we rename the documents. Then what we end up doing was uploading the documents to SharePoint. So we kind of had got everything streamlined, and yeah, again, it wasn't hard at all. It's actually pretty simple. But I want to share with y'all, so if y'all are in the same position on how to upload documents to SharePoint, this hopefully this video helps you out. So let's get started. So before I get to this, I did mention we're using Python. All right, so that's number one. Um, the other thing, we are using the SharePoint library to do this. So again, if you're following along, make sure to install this library. Um, Again, it's the SharePoint, and we'll go through some of these configurations. It's pretty straightforward, but ultimately, again, you got to authenticate, which is one piece of it, which kind of explains here. So for this example, we're using Office 365. On-prem would be different, of course, but that's not part of this example. This example that I'm showing you is not for on-prem; it's for Office 365. Now there is a way to do it on-prem, and it's actually easier, I think. And I could make a video. You want me to show you how to do it on-prem, but in this case, again, Office 365. Nevertheless, go ahead and get this installed if you don't have it, because you will need it. And let's get started. So the first thing I want to show y'all is I have a config file. Now this is a copy of my config file. I'm not going to show you my config file, but I just want to kind of show you the layout of it. Again, it's a JSON file. If you're not familiar with JSON, I'm not going to go too detail in this video because that's not the purpose of this video. Just go ahead and Google it. It's nothing complex. But ultimately, just from a high level, you have a key and you have a value. So in my case, my key is SharePoint. My object has additional key value pairs inside, which I have in this case the user, password, the URL, site, and the library. So again, those of y'all who are familiar with SharePoint know that they're the SharePoint site. Then you got what's called SharePoint libraries. So that's kind of what you have to specify in here. Some of the items in here, as you could tell, um, is standard. Like you are going to have, the SharePoint site does point to the, again, sharepoint.com, but ultimately it will be your domain of your company, that you're operating under. If you don't, that's if you have a domain registered. If you just have a Office 365 account, I believe it's something like, I can't remember what it is. It'll be whatever name you create at the time. Then it'll be like Microsoft on, I think that's what it's called, like Microsoft on dot something, and then of course it'll be SharePoint.com. But either way, it will be that name. Then of course you will specify your site. This will be your variable, whatever your site is. I'll show y'all again my site because I want to show just kind of want to show you everything from beginning to end. Then of course it'll be whatever document, ultimately whatever file, right? Whatever directory name you're going to upload it to. That is what it's going to be. So again, I'm not going to show you a JSON file. So let's get started. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a SharePoint file. I'm also going to create, while I'm at it, is a project file. All right. So I got those two in place. So let's get started with the SharePoint file. All right. So what I'm going to end up doing here is, let me close out of that. Let's see. So I need to, I already got Sharepoint, installed on my, my virtual environment. So I'm good there. So I'm going to just start bringing everything in. Sharepoint. Import site. Office 365. And then the version. All right, so the other things I need to bring in is going to be JSON OS. I need to bring this in because my config file is a JSON file. I need to be able to read it. So that's the reason why I bring that in. I bring in my OS because I want to specify my root paths of where my project is going to be running from. So instead of me having to specify the full path of this config file, because again my code is going to run in the same folder where my config file is. Ultimately, I want my root directory to be dynamic, right? So I don't want to hard code that in. So let's go ahead and get that root directory path, directory name, OS path, absolute path, file. All right, so that should give me that. The next thing is I'm going to now create a variable for my config directory path. So I'm going to call it config path OS. My bad, not OS. What am I doing? I'm going to do a join. I'm going to concatenate my root directory with my config file name. So in this case, it would be root, and then I'm going to specify the name, which would be config.json. All right, so that's that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read config file. So let's go ahead and read that file. So now I'm going to specify again this variable because this is ultimately going to give me the root path. That's going to give me back the actual path, which would be C drive, and so whatever the full path is, right? That's kind of the purpose behind that. I'm going to call this config file. Let's go ahead. I'm calling this config json.load. And I'm going to specify what am I loading. And then I'm going to just ultimately assign my my object to my config object. So in this case, I want the Sharepoint. Again, going back, if I go to the example, I have a Sharepoint, then I have this object. Ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm assigning this object to my config variable. All right. So now below, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to define my my variable, so I could kind of use throughout. So now I'm going to define my variables so I could use throughout my project. So in this case, there are 5 main variables that I need that I extracted from the config file. So if I go back, username, password, URL, site, and library. So I'm going to actually specify that over here. So I'm going to call this username, and this is going to be the config, which is again this variable over here. And then I'm going to specify what my key is. In this case, it happens to be user. And I'm going to do the same thing for password. And I believe I called it password. Yep, that's what it's called, password. And then I'm going to call this SharePoint URL. This is called URL. SharePoint site. And I call this site. Then the last one would be SharePoint. I'm gonna call this SharePoint. Just call it SharePoint library. All right. You know what? Let me give it a different name. SharePoint doc. So let me go ahead and specify that, which is called doc. Doc library, which is what it's called. All right, so now that I got that specified, next what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to create a SharePoint class. It just kind of makes it easier for me to call it in my other script. So let's go ahead and call it SharePoint class. And then inside this class, I'm going to have different functions. So one of the functions that I'm going to have is going to be my auth. So I need to authenticate. So that's going to be my first one. So in this one, I'm going to have, I need to retrieve my cookies. So I'm going to create an object for that. This is part of the Office 365. Again, if I go back on top, I have an Office 365. You know what? Let me make this a little bit bigger. There it goes. Should be fine. Part of the share pump, there is an Office 365 class. That's what I'm bringing in. This requires what is a SharePoint site. So again, this kind of goes back to my SharePoint site. I'm going to bring in that object, that variable. So SharePoint site, username, and what else? Password. Yep, there you go. So now I have that set. At the end, there is, because this is a class, I have a method which is called get cookies, which is what I'm kind of pretty much assigning to this variable. The next one is going to be called site. And again, kind of going back, I have a class called site on top. In this site, I'm specifying what are my site URL. So let me go ahead and specify the SharePoint site. What the version. So the version in my case would be, I am using Office. So there is a version that you could tell down the list. There's a 2016, 19. I'm using the V365 because I'm using Office 365. I believe the 2019 and 2016 may work still with Office 365. I believe so anyways, but you can test that out. So the other one will be auth cookies, which would be my auth cookies that I assigned, that I have over here. All right, so let's see what else. That would be for my site. The next thing would be, I'm going to return this object back. So anytime I call to authenticate, I'm going to get my cookie information. I'm going to get all of that, going to get returned back. So this is the first piece, right? You need to authenticate. That's number one. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method for connect folder, which is what I'm calling. So the connect folder, let me specify folder name. So the connect folder, this method is going to be anytime that I upload a document, right, to SharePoint or even delete a document, I need to specify where I'm uploading the document to. So the way I'm going to construct it is, as I specify where to upload to or delete from, I'm also going to be authenticating at the same time. So that's where I'm going to add this connect folder. Is it's actually going to be authenticating the connecting to the right folder. So that's kind of the purpose behind it. So which means I'm going to end up calling, I'm going to end up creating this object called allSite, which is ultimately is going to call this method up here, which would authenticate me. So this is for me to get authenticated. The next thing is I'm going to create a SharePoint my directory path, and this is going to be join. So I'm going to end up joining my SharePoint doc. Again, this is my directory path. In SharePoint they call libraries, document libraries, I guess. So I'm connecting to that URL, but at the same time I need to specify my folder name. So I'm gonna have since I'm bringing in a variable called folder name, that's where that comes in. So ultimately I'm concatenating that together, right? I have my library path for SharePoint, but I need to specify which folder that I want to connect to. I'm just kind of, joining those, concatenating those two values together. So that's that piece. The next thing here would be, I'm going to create my folder object. So this would be self allSite, which is what I needed. And then I'm going to end up, there's a folder method, and this is going to end up taking this full directory path, which is going to be SharePoint directory, right? Which it has my file name, my folder name concatenated to it. In this case, I'm going to be returning. I'm going to return that folder object. Again, so far we're not connecting yet. We're not uploading nothing yet. But what I'm doing is I'm laying down the methods that are needed to kind of better streamline the process, right? So one of the things I would tell you as somebody who, again, when you learn how to program, you're noob at one point, then you become a better programmer. I'm a better programmer now than I was, but there was some time in the past, or anytime I used to write a piece of script, I didn't use classes. Best case, maybe I had a function or two here or there, but everything was all just pretty much procedural based, and it was so messy, man. And so, like all over the place, hard to understand. Anytime you go back a few months later, it was like a big mess. So what I have learned to do over time is try to separate everything out, right? Put some thought into it, separate it out through some methods to do certain things, especially things that repeat themselves. There's no need to copy that code over and over again. Just have a function, a method to handle that. That's kind of what I'm trying to do here. So the next method that I'm going to create is going to be called upload file. Now this is the piece that we actually want to do. We want to be able to upload to SharePoint. So that's what we're going to do here. So in this case, I'm going to have so file is going to be my actual directory path to the file that I want to upload. That's what that's going to be, which means it needs to be the full path on where that, so it knows where to go to read that file. Then I'm going to have file name, and then I'm going to have the folder name, because I need to specify what folder in SharePoint I'm going to upload it to. All right. So the next thing is I'm going to end up calling my connect folder. Oops. I'm going to end up calling my connect folder function. So in this case, remember what the connect folder is doing is it's going to authenticate for us automatically. Then it's also going to provide back the object of where to upload the file to. So it's kind of doing a few things. It's authenticating us, so we don't need to authenticate. It will do it for us. As you can tell here, it's calling it up over here. Then on top of that, it's going to end up giving us the object back on where to be able to upload, like pretty much the URL for the API on where to upload the document. So that's kind of the purpose with this connect folder. Probably should have called it something different, but that's fine. It is what it is. So let me specify the, in this case, what am I dealing with? Folder name. So let me specify the folder name, and that's it. It's folder name only. Okay, so now I have my folder object, which is only going to be used inside this method. So the next thing is going to be we want to read the file. So with open, and I'm going to specify the file. In this case, I'm uploading a PDF file. So my mode is going to be RB, read binary. Keep that in mind. If you're uploading a text file, your mode will be R. You're just going to read the text file. But when you're uploading a binary file, it's different. The mode is RB. So that's the reason why I'm specifying RB in this case. So I'm going to call it PDF file. Probably, I mean, again, my case is PDF. Doesn't have to be a PDF. Let me just call it file. File object. Whatever that is, right? Because it may not be a PDF. You may be dealing with a text file. I don't know. So again, just I'm going to leave it as that. File object. So I'm going to call it file context, and it's going to end up being file object dot read. Oops, dot read. So because again, I want to read the data on the file. In this case, it happens to be binary. So that's what I'm trying to do here. The next thing that I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up selecting the, let's see, what am I doing here? All right, so the next thing that I'm going to end up doing here is I'm going to call my folder, this object that I have over here, right, folder, because you got to remember it's bringing it back from my authenticating to my site, and then specifying the folder path that I want to upload my file. So that's what I'm doing here, and then I'm calling the upload file. Again, this upload file has nothing to do with this upload file. We just happen to call it the same name, but this upload file is actually coming. It's a message that's part of the Sharepoint. So just want to clear that out. Then I'm going to specify the file context. Again, the data that's in my file. Then I need to specify a file name, which again, I'm passing in a file name up here on top. So now that I have that in order, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be iterating through. So just think about it, right? Like when you're working on a project, you may have, I have these 100 files that I need to upload to Sharepoint. I may have this 1,000 of files that I need to upload to Sharepoint. I may have 1,000 files and each file is separated by a year, right? You may have it by 2019, 2020, so they need to go in different folders in Sharepoint. Well, you're going to have to loop, again, create some sort of iteration. I'm not going to add that in this file. This file is more so to get everything configured with Sharepoint. Now I'm going to create another file, and I'm going to call projects. This is a file where you will do your iteration. This is where you will kind of build that logic to kind of, for example, read some kind of local directory iterate over if you have a lot of files, and then of course start publishing all these files to SharePoint. That's what we're going to do here. Now, before we do that, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to open up my SharePoint site that I'm going to be testing on. So again, I don't mind. I'm not going. I mean, it doesn't matter if you know what my URL is, so I'm not going to hide or nothing. But this is the domain of my kind of going back to the config file. This will be yours. This is happen to be mine. And then I have my site. In this case, it's called the Levelment, because this is what I use to do the Levelment when I'm doing some testing for my other clients. So that's kind of what you would use in your case. Now, what I'm going to do, again, libraries. We talked about libraries earlier. For SharePoint, it's part of your documents. That's what they call it. So what I'm going to end up doing here for this example, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it YouTube, right? Because that's, YouTube. So we're going to call it YouTube. Keep it consistent. That's how, I'm showing you on YouTube. So I just call it that. That's fine. All right. So now that I got that created, what I'm going to do now is let's just create a basic script that we're going to upload. We're going to ultimately upload this file. See this sample PDF file? This is a file that we're going to end up uploading to SharePoint. So what I need to do first is I need to bring in my SharePoint. I'm going to call this file, and I'm going to import my class, right? Again, I created this class called SharePoint, and that's what I'm importing in. All right, so now that I have that, let me just create a variable file directory path, right? So this is going to be the path of where this is at. So let me just copy it right quick. Copy path. There you go. So this is my full path. Again, if you're iterating over, you would have to build some logic to kind of go through each folder and so on. But just kind of trying to show y'all the quick example. Next is I'm gonna call it file name. So ultimately, when we upload it to SharePoint, we're gonna have to specify a file name. Now, technically, the file could be the same name, right? So we could just call it whatever that same name as it stands today. Or this is the opportunity for you to create a new name. You may want to create a new name, and that's fine. So this is ultimately where you would do it. The next thing is we're going to specify the folder name. All right, so in this case, I'm going to call it 2020. So by that, what's going to happen here is I have a folder that I created, right? This is a URL path, which is called YouTube. Now, in my case, though, I want to upload documents by year, because the file that I'm going to be dealing with is going to be on a per year basis, right? So I got 2019 files. When 2020 comes, I want to upload files to 2020 folder, so on and so on. So because that's the way I'm doing it in this example, I'm going to create this variable name for file name, and then call it 2020. The next thing is now I'm going to end up calling my SharePoint class upload file. And now let's specify, I'm going to specify my file directory path, because that's the first, my first parameter here is file. All right, guys, I'm back. Actually, my camera died on me, so I need to put another battery in. So hopefully I could pick up from where I left off at. So let me just start from where I left off, and hopefully it should be fine. So the next argument here is going to be, let's see, what is the next argument? File name. All right, so I'm going to specify the file name I have on top. What is it? Folder name. All right, so next thing is going to be folder name. So ultimately what we have here, I specified the path of the file. I specified the file name. Again, in my case, I'm gonna call it the same, but we'll test it out by changing it as well. Then, and I want to create a new folder. So one of the things that, as well, just kind of let y'all know, and you don't need to create the folder either in SharePoint. So again, I'll show you an example. If I go back to my SharePoint site, I don't. Let me go into YouTube. There's nothing in here. I don't have a folder called 2020. There's nothing in here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and run this script. What should happen is it should create a folder called 2020. Then on top of that, it should upload this document into that folder under this file name. So let's take a look at it and see if it works. Did not work. Okay, so let's see what happened. Let's see. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see what am I. Let's see what do I have wrong. What am I missing? Let's see. I have file content. I am reading the object, so that's fine. So this seemed to fail on what, line 22. Oh, I think I know what it's doing. I wonder if it's because I didn't specify. Let's see. I don't think I had to, but maybe I do. Username. And then I need to specify that this is the password. I did specify it over here, so that's actually fine. That's the only thing I could see. So let's run it again. All right, let's clear that out. Let's take a look at it. What are we having, man? Come on, let's see. Oh, you know what? Damn it! I just realized it. See where up here it says SharePoint site? This is not supposed to be SharePoint site. This is supposed to be SharePoint URL. Damn it, man. Almost, man. Almost had it running on one try, but it is what it is. All right, so let's run it again. All right, no errors. That's good. No errors. Everything looks good. Now let's go back to my SharePoint, and I'm gonna hit refresh. So there you go. So now we have a new folder, 2020, and there's our sample file. Again, it's an actual file. It's a random file. I just downloaded online. But again, that's the same file that I have in that we're working on. So let me just so you kind of see for yourself. Here's the sample file. If I open that up, there you go, right? Same file. So So again, this worked from a sense of it uploaded. All right, so at least we know that piece is working properly. So now let me go back and so now let's say we want to delete the file. All right, so this is something that we went through the process to upload a file, and hopefully this makes sense to everybody. If we look at the code, this is all just configuration, right? All this is doing is saying, let's read the config file. Let's assign. I'm gonna assign the variables, the keys to variables, which I'm gonna end up using to authenticate, which I'm using down here, right? The URL, username, password, etc. So that's all this is really for. Now this class is pretty much is used for anything SharePoint related. So in my case, I have a method to authenticate. I have what I'm calling connect folder, which ultimately means in order to connect to a folder, we have to specify what folder we want to connect to. So in my case, I connected to, I'm connecting to the YouTube folder. It could be something else. Now, why YouTube? If I go back to my config file, see where it says document name. Again, I'm not going to show you my config that I'm using in this project, but ultimately what I end up doing in my document name, I specified YouTube. If this is going to be a variable, then of course your library you can leave blank. That you can specify it in your iteration. In my case though, I know which folder I'm dealing with, right? Like I have my main folder, which is called YouTube, and then inside the YouTube folder, I may have many other folders. I may have it by year, whatever it may be, right? It just depends. But that's just the way I did it on mine. But ultimately, that's what the connect folder is doing, right? And then of course we have the upload folder, upload file. And again, you could tell we're calling this method over here, which authenticates us and gets us connected to the right SharePoint folder. And so all we have to do here is pass which file we want to read, right? In this case, we got to read the file first, which I'm happen to be dealing with PDF files. If you're dealing with non-PDF files like text files, change your mode to R. But in my case, it's read binary. And then we're going to upload the file. So we're uploading the context, which is the actual data, and we're specifying the file name. What is the file name that we're gonna be calling? So that's kind of what's happening here. Again, the folder name up here is what specifies which folder to connect to. And keep in mind, if a folder does not exist, it will automatically get created in SharePoint. Now, what we want to do next is we're going to create a method to delete file, because we want to delete the file now. So we're going to specify file name and which folder it belongs to. Again, pretty straightforward. Which folder belongs to your SharePoint, and then we're going to specify the name. That's how we know to delete the file. So I'm going to end up calling, I'm going to call this method the connect folder, because I need to be able to connect. Again, that connect method is going to authenticate me, and then assign me to the right SharePoint directory. So let me specify the file name, and then I'm going to call the delete file method. Again, that's not part of, I know I called mine delete file, but this is not related to mine method. It's related to the SharePoint method. And then in here, I'm going to specify the file name. That simple. So now if I go back to my project, I'm going to call that new method. Delete file. I'm going to specify file name, then I'm going to specify the folder, the folder, which is again 2020. So again, if I go back, as you could tell, I got a folder called 2020. Then if I click in it, let's see what happened. There it goes. If I click in it, I have a file called sample PDF. So what we're gonna do next is we are going to, let's go ahead and run the delete. Oh, there you go, they ran, no issues. So now if I come back to SharePoint, I'm gonna hit refresh. And no file, my file is deleted. So again, very simple when you think about it. It's really not that complex. It's just more getting everything configured. As you could tell though, what I end up doing here, I have what I call a project file. I would strongly recommend, don't put all of this together, man. Don't create, your authentication and all this other logic that you're doing here, and then including your project file. Because ultimately what happens is, this, in my mind, this is strictly more just kind of get things configured, get things connected. Again, I am using the Sharepoint library, and it makes it a lot easier. But nevertheless, though, there's certain things that I wanted to kind of streamline that it's more unique to me, which is why I have this Sharepoint file and I have that working, doing the way I want it to do, which is the authentication, connecting to the folder, things of that nature, right? In this case, reading specific files. And then, of course, I just call it, as you can tell, my project file is a lot smaller. This project file will be the file that you will build your logic to, let's say, for example, iterate over a directory path to get the list of all files uploaded. And then, of course, you can repeat the process if you have multiple files. Let's say if you have a folder that has a 2019 to 2020, and let's say a 2021 file, and then of course you could build, a script. Let's say you have a 2019, 2020, 21, 2021 folders, and then of course as you could build your script to ultimately iterate through that using like the OS Walker, or I mean, it's up to you how you want to do it, but you'll be able to identify all the files, and from there, that's where you would just call the methods, right? Let's upload the file based on these variable names, which would be whatever folder you're going to upload it to. Again, it's up to you how you want to do it, but nevertheless, this gives you a good baseline, hopefully a good understanding on how to connect to SharePoint through the API. Again, it's pretty straightforward and not that complex. And then like the mechanics on what's happening here when we're dealing with uploading a file, deleting a file. If you're gonna do something very basic, like hey, I'm gonna iterate over the one file, very ad hoc, then there's certain things that you could do. You don't have to do it the way I did, right? You could like just kind of authenticate on your one script, be able to connect to call your folder, call the upload method that's part of SharePoint, and then you start uploading your content directly, right? Very basic script, but you could do it that way. And when you're doing ad hoc, I get it, right? But more something that's systemic, that's going to be, again, you're going to be building on, that's part of your application. You not do it that way, man. Separate it out, build it right. Hopefully this helps y'all out, man. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight. Again, what I'm planning to do with this channel is I want to show y'all, like, again, projects, and I'm showing y'all stuff that I'm going through myself. So the reason why I'm showing you this specifically about SharePoint, because I actually finished working on a project that I had to do this for. Little bit there, the overall scope of that project will ultimately generate, there's a process that generated PDF files. It's saving it to a directory, then locally. Then I have another process that doing the SharePoint piece, which is ultimately picking up those files and uploading to SharePoint. So again, just kind of high level, that's kind of what the project was about. But it was, just want to share with y'all, those of y'all who are new, who may not know how to upload to SharePoint. In this case, Office 365. Hopefully this helps you out and gives you some guidance, some understanding. I'm planning to do more videos like that. So more of my projects that I'm working on, again, real world projects. I want to share with y'all how I was able to solve these problems. So hopefully you like it. Give me a thumbs up. Follow me. Check out my other videos. Peace.